When Howard Pyle got him his first commission, which was Jersey Boy and the Revolution, 4 black and white paintings, for which he earned $100 total, he decided he would keep track of the paintings that he actually did as an illustrator. So that very first painting is #1. And he did it in small daybooks. There are 7 which currently reside in the Schoonover archives at the Delaware Art Museum. The last painting, 2507, Hoops Dam, is owned by a family in Oregon. And as far as we can tell, that date is 1967 or 8. But at that time, he was in his 90s.
I think he realized in bringing storytelling and art together that the art had to have even had a greater purpose, because it was very short-lived. It was a very quick image, 4 or 5 images in a book of 300 or 400 pages. Maybe the cover, of course, always told a very strong point of the story.
A lot of his time was spent reading. I can remember being at the house in the evenings, and I would just watch my grandfather, and he was reading, and he had a big board that he had in his lap, and he would sketch, and he would read, and he would sketch, sitting in his chair right at the bottom of the stairs. And I remember that clearly. I wondered what he was doing, and now, of course, I understand what he was doing. He was finding the places that he wanted to illustrate in the books and magazines.
Many were short stories, some were novels, so he had to pick sort of incidents, which was challenging in itself. Whether he read all 120 or 30 books that he illustrated, I have no idea, but he just picked those little important events and send them all for some sort of opinion from the publisher and or the writer. So that process had to be done fairly quickly. And then from those sketches, he would go right into a major canvas. And interestingly enough, the painting was not geared to what you would call the climax of a story, you know, the actual stabbing at the very moment. Of course, a lot of these illustrations were grisly and sort of bloody and, you know, sort of overly romantic and action-filled. But Mr. Pyle said, you must pick the moment just before that happens, just before the moment of drama. And then, of course, the story will carry on through the text, but the painting just leads you just into that. After completing, in 3, 4, 5, sometimes 8 or 10 days, a major illustration or painting, then that would be shipped off to Philadelphia and New York to be photographed, to do 4-color plates. Then the painting would be shipped back, and he insisted that the paintings be shipped back to him. Many illustrators did not. So the studio began to fill with these wonderful canvases. What people don't realize is there were about 140 Pyle students, those that studied it early, came and went over the about 15-year period, and extraordinary talents, men and women. My grandfather was one of the most interesting because he had a great ability with several mediums, watercolor, drawing, and painting. And he was so well trained by Pyle and so able to work in those mediums that throughout his career he showed strength in all those areas, although the oil painting was the focus mostly of the illustration. So of the students, he shows, I think, the most competency throughout all the mediums. He may not have been the best or most powerful painter, people think of N.C. Wyeth in that regard, or the best draftsman, we think of Thornton Oakley, or John Walcott Adams, who's a magnificent pen and ink. But even my grandfather was very good at that. So his career, his body of work is consistently remarkable throughout.